enlightening. Next, I call upon the dais Mr. Shashi Krishnan, Director of NISM. Shri Shashi Krishnan brings nearly 40 years of experience in pension fund management, life insurance, and mutual fund industries with extensive expertise in equity and debt markets. In his previous role, he served as the Chief Executive Officer of the National Pension System Trust from January 2021 to January 2024. Prior to this, he was the CEO at the Aditya Birla Sun Life Pension Management Limited. He has also held leadership roles at the Aditya Birla Sun Life Insurance Company Limited, Bajaj Alliance Life Insurance Company Limited, DBS Bank Singapore, DBS Cholamandalam Asset Management Limited, and Unit Trust of India. Sir, we are really privileged to have you here.
All of you in this room are incredibly lucky to be born at this time in India, because I think this is the golden decade for India, and it's going to be the golden decades in the years to come. Because whichever way you look at it, whether it's our demographic dividend, whether it is the strides we are making in the digital space, whether it's the infrastructure that we are rolling out, whether it's India's geopolitical cloud today, I think we have not been in a better place than my living memory serves. I have been in this hall many times, right from the days when we used to have the open outcry system. I still remember, and it wasn't as ordered as what you guys are seeing it today. People never sat down like you guys are sitting down. There was a lot of action going on out here. But I think you need to get a presentation on if you can. Yeah. So what I will talk to you today is broadly about, sorry, yeah. How do I move this? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just want to tell you about, how to make investments simple. Because invariably, people will come, especially a lot of the professors that you have in your universities and colleges, will come and talk to you about very abstract concepts. Sometimes, you really wonder whether you can sort of use this in real life. So, I remember reading somewhere that, Jeff Bezos was once asked, what makes Amazon so successful? And he said, half luck, half timing, and the rest possibly brains. So a lot of it is really not in your hand, and I think it is important for us to understand how we go about doing this. How do I, okay. So the first, I think, most important thing that all of you need to realize is that savings is not investment. And I want to make this very clear because I still remember many years ago, there was this woman who joined me in my company at an entry level, and I asked her, where do you invest? And she said, I put all my money into the bank the moment I get my salary. And I said, do you think that is investment? And she said, yeah, possibly yes, but that was her initial stage. But let me remind you that savings is not investment, simply because investment is all about putting your money to work. And you really need to get to a stage where you are not working for money, but money is working for you, right? And when money starts working for you, you can then say that you have been, a successful investor. And therefore, I'm sorry, okay, I need it. Yeah. There are many places that you can invest money. Right, you can invest money into gold, you can invest money into fixed deposits, you can invest money into equity. Most obviously, because we are talking at the BSc Rotunda, all of you will think that we are talking about investment in equity, but really investment is about a large number of places where you can put your money to work. But I think the important thing for all of us to understand is how do we make money work, better for us? And I think that's the key to successful investing. And you have this very simple rule of 72. So if you want to dump down this entire process, you just simply use the rule of 72, which says take 72 and divide it by the kind of return that you will get into any asset class that you will like to invest in. And that will give you the number of years that it will take for your money to double. And the less time it takes for your money to double, obviously that's better for you. So even if you talk about property, and people, very interesting, if you look at a lot of the statistics around savings and investments that are put out by the Reserve Bank from time to time, you will find that household savings in India is only 18%, right? That's how low household savings is. And a large part of those household savings go into property and gold. And even, that 4 or 5% that go into what I would call investments, around 50% of that goes into fixed deposits. So, the way Indians have been investing in the past has primarily been into gold, property, and fixed deposits. And just look at the chart out there. If you had put your money into gold over the last 20 years, it would have taken you 6 years for that money to double. If you had put your money into, for example, fixed deposits, it would have taken you 12 years for that money to double. If you had put your money into property, and most people tend to think that property is a great investment, it would have taken you something like 9 years for your money to double. If you put your money into equity, it would have taken you just 5 years for your money to double. So that is the risk-return trade-off that you have in putting your money into these various asset classes. And what is best for you is for you to decide. And I think as you become more and more educated investors in this market, you will be able to determine what suits you best. So that comes down to a very fundamental question: is investing luck or is investing skill? And I still remember my father-in-law used to work for Hindustan Levers Limited. I mean, today you call it Hindustan Unilever or HUL. And he was a lifelong, Hindustan Lever employee. And when he started investing, he put all his money into Hindustan Lever shares. Every bit of money that he could spare, he would buy Hindustan Lever shares. Was that good investment or bad investment? I mean, today, even my previous speaker was talking about diversification. Don't put all your money into one stock. Well, he put all his money into one stock. He didn't buy anything else. And believe me, he invested at close to around 10 rupees today. Lever, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know what it is today, but it was close to 2,800 or so. So that's the kind of money that he made by just putting his money into a single stock. Was that luck or was that skill? A very difficult question to answer, because he worked in Lever, he saw that company up close. He saw that here was a company that could retain its customers over a very, very diverse product range that had some of the best management practices that are still available in this country. And it is with that understanding that he put money into Hindustan Lever. So possibly that was skill. But the fact that he put all his eggs into a single basket, did not diversify, it was a very, very risky option to take, and still made money. That could have been luck. And therefore I draw you back to what Jeff Bezos said. It is a little bit of luck, it is a little bit of skill. And therefore, I think it is very important for us to say that, there may be some decisions that we make that don't work in our favor, but you need to go on in life and, keep looking, at how you can sort of create wealth for yourself. Which brings me back to, one simple thing is, simple thing is, why do you need to invest? And I think there is only one simple reason as to why you need to invest, and that is inflation. Whatever you do, you cannot leave inflation behind you. When I went to university, in 1977, it cost me 1,800 rupees for the full year. That was the fees that I paid. All of you laugh because I'm sure, the kind of fees that your colleges charge you today. I think that would be what they charge you for a single day, maybe, if I'm not mistaken, right? So if you look at, the way fees in colleges have gone up, what was essentially 1,800 rupees in 1977 is something like 1,60,000 rupees a year today. The point I'm trying to make is that all this thing that you see about inflation in the newspapers, RBI saying that inflation will go to 4%, 5%, please take that with a pinch of salt, because there are a large number of areas where inflation is significantly higher than, that 4% and 5%, education being one of them. If you look at the rate at which, the costs of education have inflated over the last 25 years, it's been close to 9 to 10%. And therefore, if you really need to beat inflation, the only way you can do that is to invest wisely and stay invested wisely over the long term, so that, you make, a return that is better than inflation. And if you do that, I think that, coupled with the sheer power of compounding, will help you build, a corpus that is good enough for you to meet any of your financial goals anywhere in your journey through life. So this is not a trick question, because I think the concept of compounding itself is a very, very difficult concept to understand. Most of us sitting down really don't understand the exponential nature of compounding. But very simply, if I gave you 10,000 rupees every day for 30 days, right, that would be worth only 3 lakh rupees. But if I gave you 10 paisa, and I do not know whether any of you even know what paisa means today, because I think the unit of currency has gone on to, rupees, and nobody uses paisa anymore. But if I gave you 10 paisa every day, that doubles every day for 30 days, you would be worth 5 crores. So very, very simply, if you want to understand compounding, it's that small amounts of money put away very, very regularly over a long period of time, the compounding effect can be dramatic. And I think if you understand that message, right, it is no longer timing the market that becomes important. It is time in the market that becomes important. And therefore, for all of us to create wealth for ourselves, which is, I think, ultimately what all our objectives will be at some point of time, I think just remember this two very simple principles. Invest in an asset that can beat inflation over the long time, and stay invested for, very, very long periods in the market. And that is how you can create wealth for yourself. In fact, if you read the history of Warren Buffett started making money only after the age of 60. He started sort of tripling and quadrupling his wealth after that. So that the fact that he has lived to be, close to 100 now is a different question. But, that is, I think, the sheer power of compounding. And I think that brings me to, something that all of us should remember. Investment is not complicated. Okay, investment is very, very simple. It's a question of recognizing what makes a good investment and what doesn't make a good investment. And let me share a story with you. Way back in the 80s, when I was managing money for the Unit Trust of India, my boss called me to his room one day and he told me, have you looked at this company called Hero Honda? Hero Honda doesn't exist today. Of course, they have sort of split up into Hero and Honda. Both of them are separate companies today. And I said, I come from the south of India. And, I said, I've heard of this company. It's way up north, somewhere in Ludhiana. And they started off as being a cycle manufacturer. So he said, have you looked at it very carefully? Have you thought about whether you would like to invest into this company or not? And I said, no, I haven't. But can you give me one simple reason as to why I should be investing into Hero Honda? And then he looked at me and said, do you watch Ramayana? So I was completely flawed. And I don't know how many of you in this room actually can relate to Ramayana. But Ramayana was one of those serials that was made by Ramanand Sagar. It was rerun during the COVID days. So many of you people may have actually seen Ramayana during the COVID days. And, in those days, पूरे मोहल्ले में एक ही टीवी होते थे. मतलब आप सुबह जिस दिन मेरे ख्याल से सुबह 9 बजे आते थे रामायण, तो हम पूरा जूता वूता उतार के मतलब नीचे बैठते थे, मतलब आरती वारती उतारते थे टीवी का. And then this great epic serial would start. But that was not the story. So I said, what has Ramayana got to do with Hero Honda? Bringing him back to the subject. And he said, do you know who's the first lead advertiser on Ramayana? I said, yeah, I've noticed it's Hero Honda. So he said, here is a small Ludhiana-based company that has, strategically understood, how important a piece of media this is. That is, he's actually advertising in what was in those days the most expensive, media property available. And if he is doing this, there must be some serious, depth in the management of that company to have realized that Ramayana is something that will be watched by millions of Indians. And if I need to get across to those consumers, and I advertise at the beginning of this serial, I will be able to get across to millions of these investors. And, that struck me as something that's, that was extremely sort of simple but powerful. And then, of course, we did our due diligence. I went to Ludhiana, I met up with the company, the Munjas, did our research on this, invested into the company, and, made something close to a 28% CAGR on that stock. But just to, a little twist to the story, soon after, I'd invested into this company, a plague struck Surat. And I don't know how many of you are here from Surat and how many of you remember that plague. But that was one of those very, very devastating plagues. A lot of people died in that plague. And there was this company called IDPL. And I'm sure none of you would have heard of IDLPL, but in those days it used to be called Indian Drugs and Pharmaceuticals Limited. So I walked into my boss, with a 36-degree chest or whatever they call it, and I told him that, I've got a great simple idea. Here is this company that's, that manufactures, I think, whatever rifampicin or whatever that drug was called. That is the only treatment for the plague, and shouldn't we be investing into this company? Because this is a company that will do very well. And my boss asked me a very simple question. How many plagues do you think will happen in India over the next 20 years? If you think they're going to be a plague a day, then it will be a great place to invest in. If it isn't so, then, better shelve your idea and go back to your drawing board. So I'm saying, don't take it too far, but at the end of the day, I think, investment is not very complicated. It's just about, thinking a lot more deeply as to where you want to put your money into. The next thing that a lot of people who will teach you, and I'm with due apologies to all the professors in this room because I too come from an educational institution, so I'm as much part of, everything that you are, is that we tend to believe in what is called the efficient market hypothesis. And I'm sure that is something that all you students of finance will be told, that the markets are very efficient. All the information that is there in the market, perfectly determines the price at which, you will make money. Believe me, that's not true. Right? Because if that was true, then you would never be able to invest into the equity markets or even into the bond markets, because the price will always be the perfect price. In fact, I think markets are what we call the random walk. Prices move up, prices move down. Prices move because of sentiments. Prices move because of human behavior. People will react to a war and sell. People will react to good news, an election victory and buy. We've seen this happening all the time. I think the only two emotions that drive, people to invest into, these kind of asset classes are greed and fear. And again, let me share a little story with you. At one point of time, I used to manage a fund called the Master Share when I was in UTI. And I'm sure some of the people may have had their parents who invested into this particular share. And I was a fund manager of this, particular fund. And I went up to my father and I told my father, you should invest into Master Shares. And believe me, my father had never invested into anything in his life except for recurring deposits. He did not understand what a mutual fund is, let alone what equity shares were. And my father says, why should I invest into this? And I said, simple reason, I am the fund manager. Do you want a better reason? So he said, fair enough. It sounds logical enough. And he put his money into the Master Shares. A couple of months passed by and I was again home. And by then, the net asset value of the Master Share was something like 42 rupees, if I remember right. But this was a very unique animal, this Master Share. It was also listed on the exchanges. And the price on the Bombay Stock Exchange was something like close to around 150 bucks. So my father asked me, what is NAV? I mean, the NAV is, 42 rupees. And here I see a market price of 150 rupees. What is this all about? So I explained to him that NAV is the intrinsic value of what this Master Share is about. And the markets, are all about sentiment, and therefore the sentiment is extremely good at this point of time, and therefore the prices have gone up. So he then asked me, should I sell? And though I was the fund manager and I was supposed to be the expert in the room, told him, don't sell. And what was that emotion that drove me? Greed. I said, this price is only going to grow. It's only going to go up because India is in such a great place. That was the time when India was opening out and we had so much of reform happening, and this is going to do extremely well, so don't sell. I had, unfortunately, what didn't go right for me at that point of time was my uncle was also in the room and he had also bought into Master Shares because of my advice. And he said, this sounds, extremely bizarre. There is something called an NAV and there is something called market price, and both of them, are so incongruent. So I'm going to sell. And he went and sold, right? And promptly, 4 weeks later, the price fell down to 50 rupees. And I think for almost 4 years, my father didn't allow me to enter his house. So, those are the two, I think, emotions that broadly drive, all our behavior. And so long as we can sort of get hold of those two things, I think we'll be doing an extremely good job. Which comes down to, a couple of things which I want to talk to you about, which you should look at, especially if you are equity investors. And I think the first thing that you should look at is look for a moat. And what is a moat? A moat is primarily, something that protects a company to help keep its, return on capital high. And what are you doing essentially when you're buying a company? You're buying a stream of cash flows. And the longer that stream of cash flows lasts into the future, the more valuable a company is. And therefore, it is very important that whenever you buy into a stock, look for a moat. And what is not a moat is, I think, as important to understand as to what is a moat. Many of you will remember Kingfisher Airlines. I still remember the third flight of Kingfisher Airlines. I went on that. My office booked me into Kingfisher Airlines. I said, how can you book me into an airline that's got only one aircraft that flies between Bangalore, Bombay and Delhi and back? It's somewhere going to collapse at some point of time, right? But, there was a promise that Kingfisher Airlines made to us, and it said, I think if I'm not mistaken, lived the high life, if I'm not mistaken. That used to be the motto of Kingfisher Airlines, and it said, we fly the good times. So, with all those promises and a great brand, we sort of bought into Kingfisher Airlines, but history showed us that this didn't last. So a good brand is not a good moat. Just remember that just because it's a strong, powerful brand, it need not necessarily be, a good moat. Having a large market share also need not be a good moat. So you have, for example, Nokia, right? I still remember the first phone I owned was Nokia till almost 2000. I still used to use a Nokia, right? How many of you in this room have heard of Nokia? Very few of you. You heard of the company. Did you ever own a phone? How many of you owned a phone, Nokia phone? Oh, we still have a couple of people who have owned a Nokia phone. That's very good. But that is no longer a phone that people today use, right? We've got the Samsungs and the Apples of the world. So there are people who came up with better operating systems. There are people who came up with, better software. And they completely sort of killed Nokia out of the market. So a great market share is also not necessarily, a great moat. Great managements are not great moats. I don't know how many of you have driven a Premier Padmini. That was, I think, the first car I owned, and a first car that many of us in this room who are of that age would have owned. And, that was a company that was set up in 1941, right? If you go back and do a little bit of digging, this was a company that was set up by Walchand Hirachand, correct? Now that I'm in the BSc, when the BSc was the first time the BSc was sort of constructed, Premier Automobiles was on the BSc. It was one of those 30 stocks on the BSc. And Walchand Hirachand at that point of time was known as the transportation king of India. He owned literally every mode of transportation. Okay, but good management didn't help it survive. So by 2019, this company went into receivership after going through a whole host of problems. So therefore, I think understanding what is a good moat rather than simply saying a good brand is a good moat or a good management is a good moat or a good market share is a good moat is not necessarily something that will work. So essentially, what then is your best bet? How do you decide what is the best kind of a company I should be looking for? And I think the best bet is look for a company where you can bet on the customer lifetime value. Give you a very simple example. All of us paint our houses every 6 years or so, isn't it? So, that's something you can't get rid of. You will go back to the best paint company in the country. You will buy paint from them. You will paint your house. Right through your customer life cycle, right through your life cycle, you will be sort of doing that. So that's a good, illustration of what is, a good customer lifetime value. But there are other moats also that are very, very important. For example, today, when I go to buy a packet of Amul milk, I pay 55 rupees a liter. If I go out into the market, and without naming it, the second largest milk producer in this country sells that same milk for 45 rupees a liter. I am actually paying a 10 rupee premium for the milk that I buy. And why am I paying that? That is a real moat that a company has because I trust that particular brand. Look at, for example, the telecom companies. Regulatory restrictions sometimes, bring in a lot of, moats to companies. Sometimes what happens is making it tough for people to move out of your brand itself is a very, very big moat. For example, like look at Apple. Once you've got into an Apple product, you are hooked for life. There is no which way you can move out of an Apple product. Even if you want to shift to an Android product, you can't migrate your data. They just don't allow it. And therefore, every time that Apple sells a new product, they make money on that. And that is a terrific moat to have. So I think one of the first things that you should look at is try and identify those companies that have got good moats. And if you stay with those companies, with good mode through their lifetime, half your job will be done. The second important thing that you must look for when you're trying to identify what is a good investment is look at cash. And believe me, cash is king, because in the corporate finance world, right, cash is basically the fuel that runs your business. I am not getting into concepts like what a free cash flow is. I'm sure some of you students who are students of finance will come into that at points of time. But simply look at a company that continuously generates cash, because cash is fundamentally fungible. You can use that cash for a lot of things, including expanding your businesses, including paying out dividends, etc. The third thing is, every management is a good storyteller. To reach senior management, you need to be a good storyteller. And unfortunately, good storytellers don't always make good businessmen. I'm telling you stories out here, so you can, interpret it either which way. Maybe I don't make a good businessman. But I think what is more important is who are the people who are able to allocate capital better. And at the end of the day, capital is allocated, and if you can allocate capital in your businesses in the best way, I think you will have a very, very successful business. And that is something that you should, seriously look at. And lastly, I wanted to also point out the fact that if you do get into buying, shares or bonds or whatever it is, you are part owner of the company. But for the company, it is really not the shareholders who are the most important part of that company. It is all the stakeholders of that company, including the customers. And therefore, look for companies that treat all their stakeholders fairly. And, if you come across a company that treats all its stakeholders fairly, this is a company that will last into the foreseeable future. So, all you need, in my opinion, to put together a few simple rules of, good investing. One, look for a moat. Two, look for companies that generate cash. Three, look for companies that, allocate capital well. And four, look for companies that treat their stakeholders well. And if you can get these four things right, I think, your investment journey will be definitely very, very successful. I just want to leave you with one last thing, and that is, don't think that you have mastered the art of investing by, attending a session like this, or, completing your MBA degree or whatever it is. This is a lifelong journey. At every stage, the world will throw surprises at you. And I think the most important thing as a successful investor is resilience. Your ability to sort of absorb any kind of shocks that come to you, understand those shocks, learn from those shocks, and then emerge to be a better investor. The world is a roller coaster at the end of the day. Markets are a roller coaster at the end of the day. And therefore, I think lifelong learning is something that all of you guys here need to commit yourself to. Thank you so much.
A token of appreciation, Ashish Ajmera sir and President sir, Vinod Goyal sir, to give a bouquet to the guest of honor, our NSM director, Mr. Sashi Krishnan sir. Thank you very much, sir. I request Rohit Lokareti, Convener, Investisiya and Director, National Council, ANMI, to join with Ashish Ajmera sir and President to hand over to Milan sir. Milan sir, please come friend sir. Rohit sir, please join. I thank the panelists, speakers, and my directors and National Council President for giving this opportunity. And we end the session over here and we commence the next session at 3 p.m.